My name is Clara Whitmore, and I am the mother. My daughter declared dead so she could marry into a fortune. I am 52, a senior floor captain at an upscale Manhattan restaurant, and I keep receipts no one sees. I do not chase pity. I keep score. Last night, I served the family my daughter married into, the Zios. Ivy Zhao looked through me like I was another folded napkin. Her husband, Aron Sao, kept his smile careful. His mother, Mrs. Lillian Zhao, did not bother with manners. Serve me in my language and I'll give you $100,000, she said, loud enough for every crystal glass to hear. The table chuckled. Ivy's face tightened. Practiced and pretty. That was the moment I stopped being invisible. I answered in Mandarin, so clean it cut the room. Chopsticks paused midair. Aaron's eyes narrowed. At the head of the table, Victor Zhao, the patriarch, finally looked at me like I was worth the oxygen. I am not the kind of woman who flips tables. I prefer leverage. I prefer truth delivered like a court summons. And last night, truth arrived on schedule. So let me show you exactly how a waitress many people wrote off ended up speaking fluent Chinese to a power family that tried to test her. How a lie Ivy told about me became the match that lit the whole evening. How respect can be earned without asking. And what happens when a dead mother speaks for herself. 8 years ago, I was Clara Whitmore, co-owner of a successful investment consulting firm. My business partner, Robert, and I built it from the ground up, catering to high-profile clients and specializing in emerging markets in Asia. My daughter, Ivy, was only 20 years old, a promising student at Northwestern, with a future ahead of her that I thought would be unbreakable. But then, Robert chose to betray me in ways I could never have imagined. Our marriage collapsed when Robert became involved with our secretary. The divorce was a nightmare, and the financial fallout was worse. Robert didn't just walk away from our marriage, he took everything. The firm, the assets, and most crushing of all, our future. I was left with nothing but a mountain of debt and a daughter who was watching her world crumble. Ivy was always the smart one, the one who never missed an opportunity to impress. But when the bottom fell out, I saw the cracks in her strength. I had to break the news to her that she couldn't attend her dream school anymore. We had to sell our house, and I needed to find a job. For Ivy, it was too much. I could see the shift in her eyes, the loss of that belief she had in me. In us, it felt like she stopped being a daughter in that moment. By the time Ivy was 21, I was waiting tables at Romano's, living in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like grease. I tried to rebuild, but Robert had poisoned too many wells. My former clients ignored me. The doors to my old life slammed shut. Ivy went on to finish her degree, got a job in a tech startup, and eventually moved into a world far beyond what we once had. She was determined never to be poor again. But it came at a price. She met Aaron Zhao, a man from an elite family, and suddenly, I didn't fit into her world anymore. At first, she apologized for not inviting me to the wedding, citing family tradition. But as the years passed, I realized I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. To her new in-laws, I was dead. Not figuratively, but literally. It was just another night at Romano's. Another busy shift that left me sore and exhausted. I was cleaning table 12 for the third time when Marcus called out from behind the bar. Clara, you've got a party of 8 at table 15. The table was tucked in the corner, where the restaurant's VIP guests sat. And I had served enough wealthy, arrogant types to know this wasn't going to be easy. But nothing could have prepared me for the people who walked through those doors at exactly 7:30. I spotted Ivy first, dressed in a designer gown that probably cost more than my rent for a year. Behind her, Aaron Sao followed, tall and dressed to the nines, exuding the kind of confidence only money can buy. But it was the older woman who caught my attention, Mrs. Lillian Zhao, with her silver hair and glinting jewelry, walked in like she owned the place, demanding attention with every step. I watched from the wine station as they sat, Ivy playing the perfect daughter-in-law, her smile flawless, but her eyes flickering with something I couldn't quite place. I wanted to believe she was still the same girl I raised. But something had changed. Something cold. She barely glanced in my direction as the Zhao settled in, and I saw her shift uncomfortably when Mrs. Zhao began speaking in Mandarin. 20 minutes into their meal, Mrs. Zhao called out, "Waitress." Her tone made it clear she expected immediate obedience. I approached the table with my usual professional smile, ready to take their order. But when Mrs. Zhao looked at me, I saw only disdain in her eyes, as if I were an inconvenience, a servant. And then she spoke again. The words that would change everything. "Serve me in my language," she said, "and I'll give you $100,000. I turned to leave, but something inside me snapped. This was no longer just about a rude customer. This was about the years of silent erasure, about the lie that Ivy had sold to them. It was time to make them realize just how wrong they were. I turned back around and faced Mrs. Zhao, my calm smile hiding the storm that was brewing inside me. I could feel the weight of their stares as I stood there for a moment, letting the tension build, savoring the power in the silence. I had spent years invisible, but tonight, I wasn't going to let them forget who I was. "I believe you mentioned something about generous tips for proper language service," I asked. My voice steady, my words sharp. Mrs. Zhao blinked, clearly taken aback by my fluent Mandarin, the very language she had assumed I didn't understand. Ivy's face drained of color, her eyes widening in disbelief. It was as if time had frozen for a moment, and I could almost hear the collective gasp of realization from the table. Mrs. Zhao's eyes flitted over to her son, then back to me, her smug expression faltering. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. I wasn't done, though I had waited for years, and I was finally going to say what had been building up inside me. "Actually," I continued, still in Mandarin, "reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Zhao blinked a few more times, trying to process what I had just said. But it was clear her plan to humiliate me had backfired in a way she hadn't anticipated. She thought she was the one in control, the one with the power to expose secrets. But it was I who had the last word. Ivy's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She stood there, frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. She didn't know what to say, because, in that moment, the truth was laid bare for all to see. Her mother, who she had long claimed was dead, was standing before her, alive and speaking in perfect Mandarin. And the family that had judged me had just realized how wrong they were. And then, as the rest of the family absorbed the shock, I calmly turned my attention to Mr. Zhao, who was watching me with a sharp, calculating gaze. "I'm sure you've heard of me," I said, letting my words linger in the air. "I used to consult for companies in China. You might have even read my analysis of Chen Industries back in 2009. The air in the room shifted, and the table became painfully still. Mr. Zhao leaned forward, his sharp eyes now fixed on me with a mix of curiosity and calculation. "You've been in the business long enough to understand," he said slowly, his voice deep and deliberate. "I respect someone who knows this world, especially someone who sees through the facade." I didn't flinch. His words, however calculated, didn't rattle me. "I've studied your company, Mr. Zhao," I replied, my voice steady. "I've consulted for major American firms seeking to expand into China. Your company's potential was clear even back in 2009. There was a beat of silence before he nodded, as if he was impressed. But it wasn't admiration, it was recognition. He'd realized something I'd known for years, that the Zhao family needed someone who understood both cultures, who could bridge the gap between East and West. But what struck me more than anything was that my value was no longer being measured by my mistakes or my past struggles. Turning to Ivy, I saw the hurt and confusion on her face. For a moment, I felt nothing but pity. "This is who I am," I said to her, my tone softer, but still firm. "I've rebuilt my life. Not by pretending, but by facing what happened to me." I wasn't asking for her approval anymore. I was showing her the power in owning one's story. Ivy's lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, she lowered her gaze. Mrs. Zhao, who had been watching the exchange in silence, finally spoke. "You have my respect," she said. Though her voice held an edge of begrudging acknowledgement, I knew she was trying to regain control. But it was too late. I had taken back my power, and the consequences were only beginning. It had been weeks since I'd seen Ivy and the Zeos. But that night, my phone buzzed with a message that made my stomach drop. I recognized the name immediately, Ethan Ward. My ex-husband. The man who had stolen everything from me, the man who had nearly destroyed my life. I hadn't heard from him in years. Not since he disappeared with our assets and left me to rebuild in the wreckage of our marriage. The message was brief, Clara. "I need to talk. I'm in town. It's urgent. No apologies, no explanation. Just a demand." As if nothing had ever changed. My heart sank. But a part of me was also curious. What could he possibly want after all this time? I hadn't planned on seeing him again. But fate had other ideas. I agreed to meet him at a local cafe, my nerves tight as I walked in. And there he was, sitting at a corner table, looking older, more worn than I remembered, but still wearing the same smug expression that once made me feel small. The sight of him brought all those old memories flooding back. The betrayal, the lies, the way he tore my life apart. "Clara," Ethan said, standing as I approached, his voice as smooth as it had always been, but lacking the arrogance I remembered. "I've been trying to reach you. I want to make things right." I couldn't stop the bitter laugh that escaped my lips. Make things right, after everything he had done. You've got a lot of nerve. "Ethan," I said, sitting down, my gaze hard. "You think you can just waltz back into my life and fix what you broke?" He shifted uncomfortably. But I saw the desperation in his eyes. "I've been working in Portland," he continued, his words stumbling over themselves. "Building a new consulting business. It's not much, but I'm doing okay. I thought maybe we could talk." "Try to." "No," I interrupted, my voice low but firm. "You don't get to fix anything. You had your chance." But Ethan wasn't done. "I can help you now. Clara, I want to make it right." I stared at him, the audacity of his words hitting me like a physical blow. "You can't make anything right. Not anymore." But even as I said it, I knew this wouldn't be the last time I saw him. As I sat there across from Ethan, I realized something I hadn't let myself see for years. I didn't need his apology or his help to rebuild my life. I had already done that. Ethan was the past, a broken piece of the life I'd once lived. And now, I was in control, carving out a future that had nothing to do with him. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor as I looked down at him. "You can't fix what you broke." "Ethan," I said, my voice firm, "you ruined everything. And now, you're nothing more than a reminder of a life I'm better off without." He looked at me with a faint trace of guilt. But it was too little. Too late. There was nothing left for him here. I left the cafe without a second glance at Ethan, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. The weight of years of resentment, betrayal, and fear had lifted. I knew there were still scars, but they weren't what defined me anymore. I had rebuilt my life, not as the woman I once was, but as someone stronger, more resilient. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my work with renewed focus. Mr. Zhao had officially made me a senior consultant for Chen Industries, and I was finally in a position where my skills and experience were valued. My career was thriving, and for the first time in years, I could look at myself in the mirror without shame. Then, a week later, Ivy reached out. She wanted to meet. I agreed. But I made one thing clear. I would no longer be the mother she could hide behind lies. If she truly wanted a relationship, it had to be built on honesty. As I drove to meet her, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Hope that, even if our past was shattered, we could find a way to rebuild together. For the first time in years, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw the woman I had fought to become. I wasn't the broken wife or the invisible waitress anymore. I was Clara Whitmore, a woman who had reclaimed her power, rebuilt her life, and was finally living on her own terms. My past didn't define me; what I chose to do with it did. And as for Ivy, we started fresh, building a relationship based on honesty and trust, something we had both lacked for so long. There was still much to work through, but I could finally see the possibility of a future where we both moved forward, unburdened by lies. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destruction, it's about survival. It's about standing tall, reclaiming your dignity, and proving that no matter how far you've fallen, you can rise again. Thank you for watching. If you've found strength in this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your own story of overcoming betrayal in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Your voice matters.